Welcome to part 2. We're excited you're here to continue the conversation with us. Let's dive right in and pick up where we left off.
What do you say? What is your perception of Germany as a whole? Do you feel the Zukunftsgeist?
I think we, again, met like thousands and thousands of people on our journey, where a lot of people came with that question, what will the future bring, right? And they looked for an answer from me. And so I think some people were disappointed that there is no answer. What will the future bring? There's only a better question, which is, what future do I want to create? And all the feedback throughout was that people were surprised. People were really seeing that they developed that courage to do something else or to do something better. And that they also felt the connection to other people, right? That they stopped talking about someone else, but really truly with someone about the future. And I think that's very powerful. So we had people that followed us on the tour. So we had people that showed up 3-4 times. We had people that left after 5 minutes. And we had people in tears, right? So we had quite an emotional journey, I guess, where we really felt that now we can see that more and more people live by that Zukunftsgeist, live by that spirit that helps them to wake up every morning and say like, yes, I own my future. I can decide what to focus on and what to influence. And I want to build a better future moving forward.
How can I be more creative and innovative? And now speaking again of AI startups or startups in general, like I can influence the future by creating it. And you got to start somewhere. Like waiting doesn't make it better. Like someone else will do it, and someone else will gonna have the life that you think you want to have, and it plays around in your head. And I think there's a cool saying of one of my friends. It's easy to get lost in the forest of infinite possibilities. Mm-hmm. You just gotta take something and do it and move from there, and then the path will emerge, right?
Exactly. And go with that question, what if it works out, right? Instead of asking yourself, like, what are all the things that possibly could go wrong, right? Because that really gives you the drive forward. And this is what I observe a lot is there's just a lot of excuses, right? People are making excuses when it comes to the future. For example, that, oh, let's just wait, right? About it. It's a very, very interesting pattern that always shows up in your mind when you think about the future, right? You just wait too long. You wait for the perfect plan. You wait for the weather changing. You wait for regulations being different. You wait for politicians to make decisions. You wait for your employer to decide something for you. You're just in this waiting pattern, right? Which I think is not helpful. Then you're also seeing a pattern that shows up in your mind, which is about andere, others.
Yeah.
Others are always kind of like our focus, right? Where you say like, oh, these others, they don't do anything, or they do the wrong thing, or whatever it is, right? So you always blame others. It's a trap as well. And then you're waiting, you feel like others are owning the future. And then you literally just refuse, right, to think about the future. And then you go into that pattern that you want to bring the history back.
Yeah.
Where you say to yourself, oh, the past was better, right? Why don't we bring back the past, right? And that is really, really something that frustrates me, to be honest, right?
Me too.
Where we say, it's not about waiting. It's not about the others. And it's not that you should think about bringing back the past, because it's actually impossible, right? It's about taking action.
Yeah.
It's about moving forward with really those little courageous experiments to see like, how can you build step by step a path forward to a future that you want to see happening. And I think one of the most interesting questions you can ask yourself is, how do you want to be in the future, right? It's not about who you want to be or what to have in the future or what to own or what to build. Is how do you want to be in the future, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a more open, a more loving, a more courageous, a more curious person, right? Because then you feel like you have everything you need and you can control everything about your future. Because if you want to be more courageous, right, you can take those little leaps every day, right, towards becoming a more courageous person.
And it's about the now. That's what I find so interesting, because like it's always easier, as you said, to look into the past because you already know the past. So this feels like comfortable, and the future is uncertain. But actually, the future and the past both is not real. Like it's something in your head. It's some kind of experience that you had in your head. That, and our brains are sometimes weird. Like they even change things, like thoughts. So the only thing that is really real is the now. Right, so that's the point where you can start, and that's the only point where you should start with the mind of changing the future. That might become then the real thing when it's the now.
Absolutely, yes, and that's fascinating, right? It might sound very, very complex, but it's actually quite easy, right?
Yeah.
If you just train yourself in imagining, right, that better future or how you want to be in the future, and do that over and over again, your mind, as you said, starts to think that's reality, right? That's the now. So you're already creating the future that you want to see happening.
Exactly.
Thought by thought.
Speaking of creating the future, like if we come back a little bit back from the philosophical standpoint, there's a big change happening right now, especially with AI. There's many technologies out there that are transforming the world at the moment, but a really significant one is AI. So besides the buzzwords and besides the hype, what are areas that you find particularly interesting personally within the domain of AI and what comes with it?
Yes, I think there's two things for me that I find interesting. The first is what's our relationship with AI, right? And I mean that by, do we have like an emotional relationship, right? A romantic relationship, a relationship that is really based on our emotions, right? And I think that's where we're getting into very interesting questions,
Yeah.
right? And I think I already have like a very intimate relationship with my AIs, right? Where I ask questions like, how can I be a better human being? How can I be a better father? How can I be a better partner, right? All of those questions I think are very interesting and they're very intimate, right?
Yeah.
Because you trust a technology to give you some answers, some guidance, some advice based on what you already have exchanged with that AI, right? Which I find fascinating.
Yeah.
And the second thing I think that might be fascinating is, how can we use AI to really help us to grow as individuals, as human beings, right? To help us to be more courageous, to be more empathetic, to be more human, right? So that might be the next frontier, because then you're really going into some undefined, some new terrain.
It feels kind of like a little bit of a symbiosis of humanity and AI. So I can already really tell that you're really your mind works in the future because I see that's probably the future that we're heading to, right? And I think now it's our time to make that a pleasurable future, because I think there's many scenarios that this could turn out, especially on how powerful the models already have gotten. Like I do similar, like you, I use the newest version of Gemini Pro, for example. Like sometimes I really got blown away by the answers. At the beginning, I was feeling like AI is kind of like the average of the training data. So I thought the outputs are going to be average, but it's not like that. It's very interesting.
Yes. And I think, if you're blown away by the answers, I think it's upon us humans to ask the better questions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's something where we can all get better at, right? Like, what are the interesting questions that we need to explore?
Yeah. Knowledge and information has never been so close, especially on a level where we want to get inspired. Like AI is so good in getting us inspired and enhancing our problem and solution space. I did my master thesis about AI augmented ideation, so I kind of wanted to explore exactly that as well. Like, how can we use AI to give on demand different perspectives, because it was simulating perspective from different personas and giving it to the person that was testing it in a small study. So it's really interesting. So I really resonate with what you say.
Fascinating. I think we also probably can get better in understanding how our emotions show up when we use technology, right? The last time I went on an extended silent meditation retreat for it was about seven days in California. Obviously, you're not allowed to use any phones, right? You're not allowed to talk, to look at other people, nothing to write down, nothing to read, right? You're literally sitting 12 to 14 hours on a little cushion, and you're observing your breath, right? And the day when you get your phone back, right, it became that experience that was really intentional, created because we could take our phones and we put it in front of us, and then we put our hand on our heart. And then we just thought about activating the phone, right? Turn it on. And you already could feel like your heart beating faster. You could see that you're starting to sweat, right? You have more like a faster breathing, right? And you see that your body is changing just by the thought of, now I'm going to turn on my phone, and there's going to be messages or notifications or news or probably some negativity from the last 7 days, right?
Yeah.
And that thought already creates a change in your body, which I find fascinating.
That's fascinating.
So imagine, like, every time you use AI or you use your phone or you do something with technology, you put your hand on your heart, there is an emotional change that is happening, right? And I think understanding that better and trying to really get better at navigating that, right? Not just become aware, but maybe saying, okay, if the technology is creating frustration a lot of time, or it creates anxiety, what can I change within myself to have less anxiety, right? And maybe be more curious.
How can I change the perception on the subject? Like, it's very interesting. Again, not an expert, but I've also read studies that exactly tell us that it's the expectation of the brain that activates the triggers, how's it called? The set of series of events within your body to release some kind of chemicals.
Absolutely.
So it's not the thing itself, but the expectation on it. So crazy. It all happens in the brain.
Exactly, yes. And all happens in the mind and the body and the heart, and the combination of all of those three.
Yeah.
And then imagine if you think about a better future.
Yeah.
Right. Every morning you wake up, you feel like, okay, I'm thinking about 3 things that I want to experience that are positive, right? And then feel your heart, right? Because then you create excitement, you create openness, you create curiosity, you create that desire that you want to live in that future, because you're now creating it, right? And I think that's something fascinating, where we move really towards something that is in our control, in our hands, and we move towards shaping the future we actually want to see happening.
I can really see that. Speaking of like shaping the futures, also again, startups do that. They have a huge societal impact, especially the AI startups. What can we give the founders that are listening right now to develop systems and software and products and services with that in our minds, that something should be positive on society and not have a negative effect?
Yes. What I'm observing is that a lot of people only ask for one thing when it comes to, like, their startup or their ideas, and that is investment. And I think that's the wrong eye. I think we should start with imagination, right? Imagining that better future, and then starting building it, right, with little experiments that you can try. Because investments, they don't lead to innovation. Right? I've never seen, like, if you throw a lot of money at something, that it will be the best innovation, right? But I think we look for, like, investments and resources and money to create that forward movement. And I think that's wrong. I think we should start with imagining. We should invest in ourselves, right, in ways that we can imagine better, that we can ask better questions, that we be more courageous, that we experiment more, right? And be more empathetic. And I think that's something we should invest in instead of asking for resources and money. And I think that's something that I just recommend highly, because I worked with thousands and thousands of innovators at Google, right? Who literally built self-driving cars, Google Glass,
Best of the world.
you name it, right? And the one thing that I have observed, what made them stand out and what helped them to innovate, was their mind state, right? It's the perspective they have in any given moment that determines how they experience the present. It's not a mindset. I respect and highly admire Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and fixed mindset. I think that was a very important language that she introduced and research into the world. At the same time, mindset change is very hard. So mind state is something different, because it's the moment to moment perspective that you have control over, right? And if you look at a situation differently, at a human being differently, at an idea differently, you change your perspective. And I think if you change your perspective and you're able to do that, always something new emerges, right? And that is something that I want to offer to people, is that mind state, those mind state practices, mind state training that really allow you to grow as an innovator, grow as a human being, and then come up with the next maybe world-changing idea that really helps us to experience a better future.
And that is fueled and multiplied best by collaboration, right? Working with other people.
Yes.
Sharing, being open, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I think collaboration is really something that everybody's not good at, right? We don't grow up to be good collaborators. You just look at kids, how they play separately, right? So collaboration is really a learned behavior. And most of the people think about competing, right, with each other, which doesn't lead to a better result. Like, it's the opposite, right? Only collaboration leads to something bigger, something better, right? So how can we help people to collaborate more, or even organizations, teams, industries, countries, right? Because that is a really, really powerful way of looking at the world and building a better world, is by really creating better partnerships, collaboration, by making friends, building relationships, all of those things that lead to something better. And I'm always fascinated that a lot of people talk about competing, right? And talk about separation, talk about, we need to be better than they over there, or whatever it is. Like, look at the automobile industry, right? Imagine if they would all work together under one brand, creating and reimagining how mobility works. Or if you look at other industries like the pharmaceutical industry or banking industry or whatever it is, right? And they would just start tomorrow to deeply collaborate.
I mean,
and then countries could follow, right? Like, countries could follow and say, like, okay, we're gonna now collaborate as a country. And cities do that sometimes, right? We have these city partnerships, right? And it's always fascinating that these city partnerships create something better for people, right? And I think that would be a better world that we live in, if we just make partnerships and collaboration and friendships our number one focus.
I think so as well. Especially, like, for example, the example you made with the automotive industry, they're in the same boat. Like, it would really help, I think, the whole industry to collaborate. Yet I see, especially in Germany, or maybe it's just my perspective, but in Germany and Europe, we're really bad with that. Like, we created a lot of silos. Also in the European Union, it's countries competing with each other, collaborating with each other, but still, like, we have all these little silos. In Germany, we should be very innovative. We've had an innovative past. The last 20 years or maybe 15 years were not so innovative. Maybe partially also because of that silos. And
absolutely,
that's, for example, also why AI Nation has been thrown out there as an initiative, because it's the collaboration of the two biggest startup ecosystems right now, Berlin and Munich. And so they created AI Nation to give a platform to also all other AI innovation initiatives where startups can thrive, because tearing down that silos will create an effect that will have more innovative startups as a result. And so the whole thing, the whole Germany, the whole society will benefit from it. And yet it doesn't really happen too often. In the Silicon Valley, that's already a little bit more inside of the heads of the people, right? From what I've got from external view. What can we learn in Germany, but also in Europe, from the Silicon Valley and California, and that mindset of more like not focusing on the self benefit, but like collaborating with each other to move everything to a different level, and then everybody will also benefit from that.
Yes, I think you're already making a great point, which is openness, right? Open with your ideas, with your question, because as soon as you open up to others, right, they might help you, right? Imagine someone helps you to make your idea a reality, right? It can only happen if you share your idea, if you're open about it, right? And if you invite others to help you to build it, right? And that openness is something that I always find fascinating, because I rarely meet people that are in that spirit of competing, right? That they want to compete against someone, right? It's the opposite, right? They're always looking for, like, who can I find that wants to work with me, that wants to build something together, right? Because that will always lead to like the better solution eventually. And it's an easy shift in your own way of thinking and approaching ideas and the future as well, because the best future is built together, right? Where we all move towards one better version or a better vision of the world and put all our efforts towards it, right? And I just can't understand it, like why people, especially leaders, don't want to be recognized with a legacy where they partnered with the most people or made something happen together, right?
Change the KPIs.
That's the legacy you want to be known for. It's not the opposite. I don't want to have my legacy being something that says like, oh, he competed with the most people in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that is something that people desire to do, right? It's the opposite. It's, you should be known for being the most open, curious, loved, whatever those words might be, person, because that is the legacy you probably want to leave behind, right? And you already have everything you need to move towards that direction.
Yeah.
And I think it just creates a happier life for everyone. It creates an easier life for everyone if we just put all our efforts towards solving climate change, right? Towards making the world a better place, which sounds like all of these big ideas. But if we work together, we can totally accomplish it.
Do you then think that maybe in Europe or in Germany we have to make our homework a little bit and become less risk averse and open to that kind of change and to the vulnerability that collaboration seems to have?
I don't know if it in Germany, I think in the world, right?
Everyone.
And we can start again with small movements, right? Like, go over to your neighbor and help them, right? Ask them, like, how can I help you? Or, go to someone on the street, right, that needs your help, right? And tell them, like, I'm here to help you, right? And just see how that changes everything. It's a small step that has a big ripple effect, because then the neighbor might open up, say like, oh, thank you for helping me, right? Next time they might help you, right? And now you have a partnership, or you have a community that is supportive, that is helpful to each other, right? And there's no better way to live together, I think, if you're helping each other, right? And that is something that starts with you. Don't say like, oh, the other person is not helping me, or they've never been open, whatever it is. No, start with yourself, because that's the only thing you can influence.
Be one of the starting points of the ripple effect
Exactly.
that changes. But we already talked about it at the beginning. Our brain is a pattern recognition machine. So I see where you're going there. Like the more often you do something like this, like helping others, the more it gets engraved into your pattern and it becomes like your normal kind of acting.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if everyone does it, like it becomes normal because the barrier of doing it gets lower for other people as well. Because of course, like humans tend to be nice to you if you've been nice to them, and the person who made the first step is the hardest. Because if you experienced a nice gesture from someone else, it's easy to reply to that nice, but doing it in the first place is the hard thing.
I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, that's
Of
nice.
course. Right? Because then you actually start to have a little bit more control over your mind. Yeah, right? Your mind usually tells you like, don't do anything, right? Don't engage or don't take a risk, or your negativity bias shows up, right? You only see the negative in an idea or a situation, what might not work out. But you can overcome that, right? If you have that inner intelligence and that wisdom and that awareness that you say like, I can overcome the negativity bias. I can only look for the good in this idea. Or I can be the starting point of not critiquing someone else, but complimenting someone else.
Yeah.
Right. And then you're starting already to live a life that you probably want to live. And it's an easy thing, right?
Yeah. Kill him with kindness.
Absolutely, yes.
Actually, being kind is also one of the personality traits that I think is very important in like the collaboration of humans.
Absolutely.
Kindness, being kind, thinking about what kindness really means. Not every kind gesture is really kind. Like I think kindness has some kind of, doesn't need an answer. Like you shouldn't expect help as a reward for helping someone. Like you should help someone because you want to do it.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And then you can, to build on your idea, right? If you do these acts of kindness every day, right, and you get better at it, right,
yeah,
you create this vicious cycle around, I'm now a more kinder person, right, because I did 10, 20, 50 acts of kindness today. And then you receive some kindness back, right? And then you really move towards something that is, again, like maybe radically better. And that is, I think, fascinating because it's not rocket science. And it doesn't have to be. It's a small act that everybody can do, which goes a long way.
It's really interesting because like everyone has this feature built in. Yeah, you just have to do it. Everyone knows what kindness is and experience kindness. Sometimes some experienced more often, it more often. Some experienced it less often. But no matter where I traveled in the world, like it was there. No matter what kind of person it was, like what the person was doing. Was it like a homeless person, like you were talking about? Sometimes especially back in my past, I was talking to those persons because I think it's very interesting stories that they have. To the biggest manager ever, like everyone has it, like we share it.
Absolutely, yeah. Which brings us probably back to that experience in the bus, right? Because there is a lot of homelessness as well, like you see everywhere, right? And like, think about like, what's your contribution, right? Instead of just talking about that problem, say like, oh, complaining and talk about other people, like, what's your contribution? What can you do as a small act of kindness to maybe make a little difference for someone else? And so my daughter and myself, we observed and empathized with homeless people, and we saw that mostly homeless have like one hand on a sign saying like, they need a donation, and the other hand on their pants, because they probably don't want to spend any money on a belt. And so what we felt like, hey, let's help these people to have another hand free. So we bought belts.
Wow.
And it's not changing or it's not solving the homelessness crisis. But it's a little contribution that you can do at every stoplight. You see a homeless person, to say like, hey, here's a belt that might give you like a little bit more freedom, at least with one hand.
Wow.
That is just something that you observe, right? you empathize, you create a solution that's meaningful, and then you help another person to maybe live a little bit of a better life. And so it's these small things that really you can think about, right? It's not a big innovation, but it's using empathy in your daily lives that can make other people's lives better as well.
I see that, and I really appreciate your perspective on the detail and noticing it, and then doing something against it. I think you will have to add that as well. Like you gotta look for those kind of things because they're around you all the time. Like I was at the train station and I wanted to get a sandwich before I moved with my train. And then I noticed there was a little girl. She was maybe like 14 years old or something like that. And she was always constantly like looking onto my sandwich. And I noticed it. And then I just asked her like, what's wrong? Like, are you hungry? And she was like, yeah, she's hungry. And then I had to go to my train anyways. And then I just gave her my sandwich and I walked away. And when I was walking away, I was feeling like, I was feeling better. The other person was probably feeling better. So like for me, it was just a small, like a super small gesture. But in the end, it's multiplied and it's like creating a very different world. And I think if more people had that world view that you were sharing right now, I think we'd be in a better place. So thank you for that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's also being aware of your privilege that you have in this world, right? And a lot of people ask me like, oh, what's the homeless situation in San Francisco and isn't it bad and why are people not doing something about it, right?
Yeah.
But that's again like talking about others.
Yeah.
Instead of talking with others,
Yeah,
right? Like, what's your contribution? What are your actions? How can you make this situation better, right? Start with yourself. And that's something I think we can all do by changing the way we think, changing the way we act, and then eventually changing our inner world to make that change in the outer world that we want to see happening.
Yeah, like the perceptions of others as well. So like I also have some questions that are where everything that we were talking about is really important, but again also for our startups, I think they would benefit a lot if you could share us a little bit a summary on what we've just talked about, like practical tools for them, so they can stay creative and handle that uncertainty that we were talking about. Like we've briefly mentioned some parts. Do you have like maybe some kind of framework that you have in your head that helps them, or should they just do everything we said already?
Yes, I think there's a couple of things, right, that they can engage in. I think we talked about those, right? It's like starting with not asking the question, what will the future bring, but what future do I want to create, right? And then thinking about the future is not something that starts tomorrow, it starts from within, right? Exactly. And like, so imagining that better future, imagining that solution that you want to build, the impact you will have and so forth, I think is a first great step. And then courageous experiments, right? Just step by step moving towards that vision that you just imagined. For an organization, I think it's important to establish those rituals, right? I think we all agree on the values probably that we have in an organization, but rituals really can bring those values to life. And those rituals can be very powerful because they don't cost anything, right? And they really move your organization from being a good organization to being a great organization. I have a lot of those practices in my book that I feel can really help you as an individual to unleash something that is already inside you, right? That optimism, that openness, that curiosity, that sense of empathy that allow you to build that better future for yourself and then eventually for everyone else as well.
That's really, really nice. I hadn't, like, prior to when I was researching for the podcast right now, like I had the idea that maybe like a lot of the organizations are getting creativity wrong and helping to create a creative movement within the company because they try to get the humans and the employees more creative.
How do they do that?
Yeah, and I thought maybe it's the wrong point to attack. I think we talked about children earlier, and what you've mentioned from your book, like the curiosity, the experiments, the openness, the empathy, like that's all kind of things. The imagination is what we have and what we experience when we grow up, and then as the more we grow up, the more we get restricted by boundaries and barriers that society creates up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't focus on like getting humans and employees more creative, but like getting away that barriers that created to access the creativity that is there
Absolutely. Yeah.
already.
Yes, I think just giving people permission to be creative, right, and allowing them to innovate and try and experiment, right. I think that is a sense of freedom that you give people, right. Instead of thinking, what are the regulations, the rules all around that I want to create in the organization, think the opposite, right. How can I create more freedom, more space in that regards to allow people to be creative? And that is just turning that question upside down, right?
Yeah,
Instead of thinking like, oh, we need to have like certain kind of rules, or like we have to have principles, whatever it is. Workshops. We have to have like, just to give people that sense of freedom that they can try things. And I think in my 12.5 years at Google, I've tried a lot, and I really pushed the boundaries, right? To push that culture and the organization always to innovate and experiment and shape the future. And I've never seen anybody to put a stop sign in front of me.
nice.
And I think that's true for probably every organization too, right? That we shouldn't think like, oh, I'm not allowed to do that, right? But what's the best thing that can happen, right? If I try, and then just go for it. And I think we're always looking for someone else to give us that permission slip, right? That says like, go innovate or go try something or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Nobody will give you that. Like, you already have it in your pocket.
Yeah.
Right. Just go for it and try and see what's already the potential that you have inside you that you can unleash to build that better world that you're looking for.
So if you were to build an AI startup right now, what's it be about? What would be the focus, and like what would be the vision for it for the next few years?
It's a good question. I think it's about human growth and about human consciousness, right? So how can an AI help a human to grow? That would probably be a question that I would put out to look for an answer to. Because if we look at AI as your coach or your mentor or your guide or your partner or your friend, whatever it is, I think we're already on a great track to see that as a partnership, right? Where your best friend always helps to put a spotlight on you, is happy when you're successful, and helps you in any ways they can, right? And I think that might be for me a great vision to build something like that.
It's really interesting that you say that. Like, I think so as well. Like, it's gonna be probably, I think the emotional connections where we're gonna see a lot in the future with startups. That's already the end of the podcast. So thank you very much for taking so much time. I think we've talked for a while. To our listeners and viewers, I hope you enjoyed the episode with Frederik Pferdt. As we said in the intro, not only like professor at Stanford and the first Chief Innovation Evangelist at Google, like he's also advisor to many companies, to nations. Like the list is long, and I think it's very valuable to get an idea of the perception and the worldview of you, and I think everyone will appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.